Torna the Golden Country, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into, and at most, I just thought it would have been a fun game just because I really enjoyed Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I was also interested to see the events that happened since this does take place 500 years before the main game stories, and this showcases characters like Jin, Law, and a few others and how they were back then. With a basis like that, I was really curious to see how it played out, and for the most part, I thought it was really great. But I'll get why into that a little bit later. And I also want to mention that this would just be on Torna, so nothing else that's a part of the expansion pass will be talked about. So any of the new side quests, characters, and whatever that was added to the base game, I will not mention, so keep that in mind. And the topic of this video, one of the things I actually loved about the expansion pass was the gameplay. That was probably super obvious to anyone who's seen my likes and dislikes on Xenoblade 2, and I'm just being honest here, it's still really fun in Torna. But there are some slight changes to the system, like for example, the characters all have real guard arts, which is basically extra arts for when they're helping on the sidelines. So say if Laura is out and Jin is in the back, he will, once in a while do some attacks to help out deal more damage. And then there are also swap arts, which basically deals damage along with inflicting something on the driver combo, whether it's break, topple, launch, or smash. I believe someone like Aegeon has launch and Mytho has smash, and you can just go look at it for yourself, but that's some examples. Then there's also talent art, which is basically a unique art that has a positive effect, but you have to meet certain requirements. For example, Laura's talent art is her lowering half her HP to recover her arts to full, so that can definitely help in a pinch. Another change made to the game was that you actually don't need to finish a blade combo to get an elemental orb, and now all you have to do is do any special of any level to get it, and you have to do this once at least for every element. I kind of do like this change just because it helps build up faster and you can actually do chain attacks a lot more quickly. I also love how the game looks, but I feel that it's expected considering the fact that it's using basically all the assets from Xenoblade 2. But I kind of do feel they actually touch them up a bit and just makes the game a lot more colorful and pops more. So in some cases I do kind of think that the game actually looks kind of better from the original Xenoblade 2. And from the UI to just running around the field, everything again just makes me feel that the devs tried to make the best out of the Switch hardware along with the engine. The game story I also found to be pretty great overall, as you can probably guess from what I mentioned before. And this is a spoiler warning, but stuff like the ending with Mythor on accident killing the Torna Titan, along with a person she threatened with the Travelers, and it leading to Pyro's existence really got me. I also really enjoyed seeing why Jin, Hayes, and everyone else became the people who they became in the initial game, considering Jin lost both his driver and another friend to Amalthus. That also really got me. Overall, I think for the most part, it was just pretty well paced and super interesting to see it all play out. And the game is also pretty open and explorable too for just a $40 expansion, which is great. While the maps are a lot smaller in comparison to the base game, there's still a decent amount of nice secrets to be found. Stuff like the desert area with it having some different entrances to parts of the map, and stuff like Gomont kind of acting like how it was in the base game but slightly smaller. I could say I never really got bored exploring the maps, and I kind of did expect it to be around this size considering the fact that again, it's not a full-fledged game, and for what it is, it's pretty fun. I also love the OST for the game as well, and while it does reuse a lot of Xenoblade 2 songs, I still think it's amazing regardless. But with the new songs, I think they're just absolutely phenomenal and probably some of the best songs in the entire game, along with just everything else. But some of my new favorite tracks definitely have to be Gomots, the Torna themes, and of course the battle theme. And as you can probably tell, I love this expansion. It's very well made. I feel for just a new story alone, I think it's worth the 43 Canadian dollars, and again, it's very worthwhile getting it because you also do get additions to the main game, but frankly my main focus was just on Torna, of course. But with all the upsides, this game has some issues, and one of them definitely has to be the really bad padding you have to deal with near the end of the game. The story progression is gated by the community tab, where you basically have to do a whole bunch of side quests, and while I don't mind doing them since I found most of them to be pretty nice, by the end of the game you're expected to get to level 4, and by that point you only really needed to get to level 2. And yes, you could grind for this like throughout the game, but the game only gives you a limited amount of side quests until you get to the next part, so obviously you're gonna have to progress the story at some point, and it just like drip feeds you side quests. And again, they're not actually all that bad, it's just that I wish they spaced it out better, so maybe like at one point you get to level 2, the next point you get to level 3 and whatever else, but like I'm pretty sure by the time you need to get to level 2, you're already at the final area, so it's like, you know, by that point, you know, you're not really expected to do all that much grinding, or at least for me, I was like, okay, so I'm at level 2, maybe next point would be level 3, but no, it was level 4, and that's a really big gap. And something else I actually really didn't like was the community feature itself, because it doesn't really add anything to the game. While you do get a reward for 100% finishing it, I don't really think it's all that good. It is a nice picture of everyone in the community and the main characters, but again, I kind of felt that you should have been more. Like, for example, you get better items in the shop or whatever else. Or maybe they could have had something that affected the world, like, for example, you can get better, like, collection point items, or maybe even, like, give you slight buffs in gameplay. I also just, again, mostly think that they should have done better with this thing, because it kind of just feels forced, to me at least, and just doesn't really add a whole lot to the game. Another aspect I really didn't like was how grindy the pouch items have become. In Torna, you don't have the option to buy them from stores, and all you have to do is craft them. And in the base game, you actually do have to grind for them as well, but you can still buy plenty from the stores, so at least there was an option. And my only guess for this was that you can't do it in Torna because of the fact that the time period, because it is set 500 years in the past, maybe that's why, but from a gameplay standpoint, I think it kind of sucks because you have to spend a lot more time grinding because you have to get stuff from collection points or stuff from enemies and stuff like that. And overall, I still do love this expansion, and frankly, I would still recommend it despite all my problems. I feel the worst part, the padding at the end of the game, is the worst part of the game, since, you know, it just extends it for very little reason. The other two dislikes at most I just find annoying, and they're not deal breakers. And even some of the other aspects I had issue with in the base game, like the compass and the minimap not being all that helpful, doesn't really affect Torna all that well because the maps are a lot smaller. So overall, I think the positives do outweigh the negatives, and I think if you enjoyed Xenoblade 2, this is very much worth all the money because of all the cool story moments and the slightly changed gameplay to keep it fresh. But I want to hear what you guys liked and disliked about this entry. Let me know in the comments below. And of course, before the video finishes, I'll go over my likes and dislikes. Likes: great gameplay, game looks fantastic, amazing story, fun and explorable world, the OST is great, and that goes for the new and old songs. Dislikes: really bad padding at the end, community feature doesn't add all that much, and pouch items are a lot more grindy. Thank you all for watching, and see you guys later.